Hello, hello, blissful parents. Michelle Abraham, your host here today. I have brought to you a fabulous guest. His name is Kevin Williams. Hi, Kevin. How are you doing?
Hey, great to be here. How are you?
I'm so good. Well, it's nice to have you here, Kevin. Kevin is the host of Legendary Dads podcast. You guys just launched in the last couple of months, and it's gaining some great success in its first few months of being out there. And I wanted to bring Kevin on because I think he's got a very interesting perspective on parenting for us. And, being a legendary dad. What does that all mean? So we're going to dive into that in a minute. But let me first just share a little bit more about Kevin for you. So Kevin's been married for 22 years. He's a dad of 4 young kids. Kevin's focused on helping dads be the best they can be for their family. He believes that everything rises and falls on leadership, and it starts on the inside. Behind his passion for working with dads is a heart that cries for the children and wives who are missing out, struggling, or worse, because the men in their lives are not sure they have what it takes. He knows from hard-won experience that all dads have what it takes to provide fully and deeply what their family needs from them. When things are looking rough, he says, we have to hold on into the truth that all of us are capable and far more than we realize. We can see this truth when we stand firm and don't let storms of life chase us away from those that are counting on us. Kevin encourages those to engage with him to take courage and embrace the challenge of digging deep within to see the true heart, because everything we do or don't do in life seems to form who we are. So, Kevin, that's a very awesome introduction. Tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you're up to.
Oh, what more can I say? Well, I mean, as a general background, I've been through quite a number of experiences. I've done a lot of sort of construction related work, but I've worked as a youth pastor as well, where I learned a lot of things about not just about leadership, but about family. And in fact, it was there where one of my sort of fundamental parenting principles was formed before I was ever even married. And it was this idea that it seems a little arrogant, but since I'm not even married, I decided that when I was married and had a kid, I would maintain such a relationship with my children that even when they were teenagers, they would still talk to me as their dad. And of course, when you're not married, that sounds like an arrogant thing. And oh yeah, sure. Right. Wait till you get there.
No, wait a second. You are there. You have 4 teenagers right now. How is
it now? Yeah.
They still talk to you?
Yes, they do. And that's so I apparently figured out how to do that, which is pretty awesome. So there's that. And, I guess I've always, considered, I suppose you could say I've always been a dad in the sense that, I was working with young people before I was married and before I had my own kids. And I've always also had this heart for women, which it took a while to understand what that was and what it meant. But I always cared a lot about what was happening to women around me, and that I knew, and even in general, those that I didn't know. And that has been one of the 2 key instigators to this process, I think, was recognizing the impact that husbands and fathers have on their wives and their daughters and others that they're raising. So I want to help dads because I'm a dad and I relate, and as a man, I get that. And so I want to help them as well. But there's also this part where I want to do it also because of the impact that we can have on our families. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of a couple of the big motivating parts of me, or parts of me that kind of move me along in this direction and part of what helps keep me committed to working with my family and keeping us together and sticking together through the thick and thin of life.
Right? Yeah. Thick and thin of life. So your kids are, 12 to 19 now. You have 3 girls and a boy, which is really awesome. So you're really in the trenches with us parents right now, and, gone through all the ups and downs and craziness of especially the last few years. And I love this term legendary dads that you've put out there, because I think it's very aspirational. And it's so tell us a little bit about your thoughts around what it means to be a legendary dad, and how being a legendary dad can really, help form the relationships you have in your families.
Sure. The thing about a legend is that it's a title that's usually given after you're gone. So, I mean, I've heard over the years people say, "Oh, so and so is a living legend." Fair enough. I suppose some people are, but it's so for me, it fits because it's a part of this idea that as a parent, what I want to leave my kids a legacy that is something that will stay with them, that can never be taken from them. And through my own journey of learning and growing as a person, recognizing that really that is probably the best that I can leave my kids is this understanding of how to live life to the fullest, how to live their best possible life, and how to share that with other people. So in terms of being a legendary dad, my ambition is to leave such a legacy like that for my kids, that my great grandkids and their children will talk about this purpose and this process that I initiated with my family, so that I'll be a legend in my family, in the family tree. It has nothing to do with what goes on in the rest of the world directly. I don't want to be famous around the world necessarily, but I do want my family to have everything they need to live an amazing life and to deal with whatever is going to come in the future years. I don't know. And so that to me is what would make a legendary dad. And that requires being very intentional and focused in the process of parenting.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a guest on Blissful Parenting a few weeks ago, and Rachel Duffy, and she was sharing about how her job as a parent is to make sure her child loves herself or himself. That is the job. And so that very much is an alignment with your legendary dads, and leaving, allowing people to aspire to that, and then you leaving them with these great teachings. And having a podcast, I think, is a really great thing too, because now your family and your kids are going to be able to go back and listen to all these episodes that you have as a podcast too, where you really taught your legacy that you're leaving, which I think is very cool. Thing to do as well.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that part, but
yeah. I mean, that way you're like leaving it in somewhere like a book or a podcast where people can access it. Not that you're going anywhere anytime soon, but it's now out there in the world too for others to enjoy, not just your family. So, having this mission of getting legendary dads on board with your mission and movement, and moms too. And it's really, what's the essence of the movement is to really help them have a more fulfilled, more happy life. Where does that come from? Why is that so important to you?
Well, I guess, as I say, part of it is just observing life around me and seeing people struggle and not wanting that for myself or anyone else, which is common to most of us. I mean, we don't want to struggle, and we don't like seeing other people struggle. But I think, one of the aspects was, as I worked on myself and began to learn and grow as a person and really explore what's possible, I began to see how many people were sitting in an unhappy life or struggling with things that they really didn't need to, in a sense. In other words, there's a way forward and there's a way out of that unpleasantness that they weren't seeing. And some people just won't, and they don't. If people don't want to accept help, you can't help them. But the more I saw that, the more I learned about what I was capable of, the more I thought, wow, well, if I can do it, anyone can do it. I mean, I'm not so unique. So I wanted to share that and get more and more people on board with this idea.
Yeah, it's a great movement because I think being legendary in your own mind and in your own family is it's as I mentioned earlier, it's like aspirational, right? But I think if you can get dads to understand, like you said, that they have the tools to help their families be so successful, and they can be a part of a community and be a part of the support for each other. There's so many supports out there for moms, but there's really, I think, a lack of support and community for dads who are doing their best to keep it all together, plus be great role models, plus have they have the weight of their shoulders on them. So having a community and a support for the dads, I think, is a really great it's a really great place to start. And hope, what's your hope with Legendary Dads?
At its at its core, I suppose there are two things. One is I hope that it will encourage and help to foster some sense of community and sharing amongst dads. And I know this isn't the only, I won't be the only group doing that. And that's good because no one person can help everybody. So there will be that. The other sort of core message that I hope more and more men will come away with is that you do have what it takes, and that we're capable of so much more than we ever realized. Now, for me, I mean, that's been learned through, especially the last few years of my family life, where we were in a collision and having to grow and heal and walk through that. But recognizing that a lot of us just feel like we don't have what it takes, and we don't know. And a lot of the struggle with guys is that we feel like we're supposed to know, and we should just intuitively know how to be a man, how to be a dad, how to be a husband, how to do all of these things, and yet we feel like we don't know. And so we end up kind of going off the rails in different ways, trying to compensate. We're trying to figure it out, and we have a tendency to just kind of keep pushing. I'll figure it out. I'll just keep going, and hopefully it'll sort itself out, and I won't cause too much damage to my kid's psyche, and try to keep the marriage together. So that, I suppose, those are two things: is the community, but even anyone who doesn't sort of latch on to the idea of community or reaching out, I just want guys to know that if you're willing to do the work and to search, you'll realize you do have what it takes. It is there. It's just that we often need help to understand what it really means to be dad and how to be a good husband. Like the nonsense we hear online is often just so distracting and disruptive and damaging, really. So yeah, so I'm hoping that we can kind of begin to bring in some better understanding of that and how to move ahead in a more loving, healthy, beneficial way.
Right. Yeah. And so, a lot of our listeners are parents of both genders, but a lot of our listeners are moms. And so what do you have some advice for the moms out there that maybe are recognizing that their significant others, the dads in their families, are struggling? What do you have some tips for them to help support them?
Oh, I suppose there are lots. So,
yeah. Well, yeah.
It's hard to know what's necessarily to focus on in a short answer, but I think there are a couple of things that are, broadly speaking, most helpful. I think one is understanding that if the relationship between a husband and wife is not going as you like, trying to understand where he's coming from in terms of some of the things that I just shared about, right? We feel like we're supposed to know. Here's this great catch-22 that we live in. We're supposed to know how to please our wives. We feel like in the movies and everything that we see just says, oh, guys, real men, they just know how to make their wife happy. whether you're talking about just sort of home life or in bed, whatever the case may be. Um, and so if we don't know, which obviously we don't know everything about how to make any woman happy, you have to get to know them. It's a personal thing, right? So, but we feel like we have to know, but we can't admit that we don't know. Like, I don't want to tell my wife, I don't know how to make you happy, because then I'm admitting I'm not a man, because I'm supposed to know as a man. So there's this catch-22. And if she can create that environment where I'm feeling safe to be vulnerable and to share that and begin to admit what I don't know and where I need help, that goes a long way to me beginning to explore that and start to behave better, and that will start to improve relationship. I think that's the one of the big things is just, I suppose it's an empathy thing, right? It's kind of going, well, this isn't quite the way we want it. Who are you? What are you struggling with? How can I create? How can I support you in that? And often guys are not willing to admit it, and it takes time to let them open up. That can be a really big one.
Yeah, like, so giving them that space and that security, that it's a safe space. And I think there's a lot of pressure on dads to have it all figured out and, traditionally to, kind of hold up the household. And, I think it's like traditionally it's been a weird thing where it has been mostly the guys have to hold it all together, right? So, yeah, I like this where we're moving more into it's a partnership that both people in the relationship need to really help and be a part of it and hold each other accountable, but also support each other and have that understanding of each other's needs in order to bring out the best in each other too.
Yeah, and that includes things, because it is two-way street. I mean, you asked me sort of what can something that women can do to help the men, but
yeah,
obviously the men have their responsibility too, and a lot of it is how we present ourselves, right? So obviously if a man's not handling those concerns he has well, that's on him, and he needs help to figure that out. The other thing is how my wife points out my flaws or what's going wrong. How she says it or how she does it makes a difference to how I'm going to respond to her. So we have to, as you say, it's kind of teamwork where we have to be thoughtful and careful and intentional about how we raise the questions and engage in those conversations.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I was reading, I forget what philosopher it was that said this, but a male's innate need is to feel appreciated, and a female's innate need is to feel loved. So, like, if we know those at the core, and also helps to know like each other's love languages, I think too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that all is helpful. It just takes a few minutes to learn those kind of things, and it helps create a happier environment at home, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That book, The Five Love Languages, is a really good one to read.
It is. Yeah. Is it San Miguel? Oh, is it Miguel? No, it's something that does that book. Oh gosh, The Five Love Languages. Gary Chapman, that's who it is.
Chapman,
yeah, that's who it is. Gary Chapman. I always forget. I think there's two versions of that book, but yeah. I know someone that went to the retreat in Hawaii and said it was really an interesting experience, his retreat too. But yeah, I think that book goes a long way to helping communication in a relationship too, for sure. Yeah, yes, I did ask you the one way answer, but yeah, it goes both ways, obviously, for sure too. But I love this like aspirational, aspiring to be a legendary dad in your own home, and we can bring that into being legendary parents too in our own, which is what we've been doing at Blissful Parenting, being blissful parents, helping a million families become more blissful in their experience of living. So can you tell us a little bit more about your podcast, and where can our listeners find out more about the legendary dads, where to hear more interviews with other legendary dads that you're interviewing?
Legendary Dads podcast is I think it's pretty much on all the main platforms, just about anywhere that you might be listening to podcasts, you should be able to find it under Legendary Dads. Sometimes you add my name, that helps to search Kevin Williams. But yeah, as we said, it's about helping dads to become legendary in the sense that they will learn to become best of themselves and to share that with their families, and to help their wives and kids to become their best selves as well, and to really grow together in that process and be intentional. And that's part of the, you say, aspirational title. Part of that is it's giving us something to fight for, because we don't have anything to fight about these days. And I mean, there's war. We go to physical war with other countries, but in day-to-day life, we want to challenge. We want to like work towards something and fight for something, not necessarily in a win-lose battle kind of thing, but recognizing that it's okay for me to fight and to have that spirit of wanting to get something. And so learning to fight for my family and for their future gives me a real sense of purpose and focus, and begins to draw that energy in a very positive direction. So that's the other side of the title, and what I hope that this podcast will stir up in men.
Yeah, I love it. It gives you something and purpose. And I think that's something that a lot of people are like a little bit lost on these days too, right? So finding that sense of purpose and holding on to that, I think is awesome. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today on Blissful Parenting. This has been fabulous. So great to learn about legendary dads, and so great to hear there's someone out there cheerleading and supporting the dads along the way, and creating a community of dads that are, aspiring to be those legendary dads. You're doing amazing things out there, and I want to thank you for joining us today on Blissful Parenting. Any last words for our parents out there today?
You're welcome. Thank you. I would always just leave with that thought that you have what it takes, even when it doesn't feel like it. And so believe that you are capable of more than you realize. So when it feels like you're at your limit, just take the next step. Just take one more step, one more day. When life's at its real worst, just one more step. Just keep moving and doing what you can, and you'll find that you have what it takes.
Awesome. Great words of wisdom from Kevin. Thank you so much, Kevin. Have a fabulous day out there. Blissful parents, go out there. I'll see you again. Same time, same place next week. Thanks, Kevin, for joining us.
Bye for now. Thanks.